Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome legendary restaurant brands chairman and CEO Paul Mangiamele to the Reboot Chronicles. Paul is a master rebooter who was originally, I should say, brought on to lead the turnaround of Bennigan's and Steak and Ale, but he ended up buying the firm, one of my favorite things to do, and bringing the brands back from the brink, as we like to say, especially at Kellogg, with most fast casuals out there like Applebee's and others having contracted over the last decade or so. Legendary has been actually creatively rebooting and expanding. So, Paul, it's great to see you. I was wondering if you could just start out by giving us the scoop on, what's the current size and scope of the operation, and where are you in your reboot journey at this point?
Okay, perfect. I think to start this off, I have to say first, thank you for inviting me to this pantheon of illustrious leaders that have led a lot of different industries over the years. I'm honored and flattered and glad to talk about my brands, because if anybody asks you, I can give you a half hour on any one topic with regard to Bennigan's and Steak and Ale. But where we are right now, I mean, obviously, we're all dealing with this wonderful thing called COVID and learning how to navigate through, all the different obstacles that it's created. So today, with Bennigan's Steak and Ale and Bennigan's on the Fly, we have over 100 restaurants, whether they're open, under contract, or under development right now. A lot has helped me, and we can spend more time on this later, with realizing the obstacles and the restrictions of coming in to eat and dine in restaurants. We pivoted to the point where we learned to embrace and then become experts on delivery. And recently, I just forged a fabulous strategic partnership with Reef Kitchens that's here out of Miami in Florida.
Yeah, Reef Kitchens is a unicorn tech company, and they've done deals with Wendy's and TGIF, and now you guys. And
exactly.
What's your strategy there? Are you moving to delivery versus brick and mortar, or what's the play?
I think it's a mix. I think it's always a blended strategy of utilizing whatever can help you drive revenues, drive unit level profitability for my franchise community, as well as take a look at other areas of revenue generation. So with Reef Kitchens, as you already know, I mean, they were financed with $1 billion from SoftBank. They're state of the art in terms of how they're operating right now. They've really, even though there's still a lot of the learning curve, they've really mastered a lot of the issues. So we just launched in Dubai, of all places, looking at about 15 different domestic locations right now. But in Dubai, they actually bought the delivery company, so it made it very easy. And we're in the Middle East and have been for over 20 years. So there's already brand awareness. But getting back to casual dining and delivery, never used to mix. And because it's about hot food hot, it's about cold food cold, and it's about what does the integrity of the menu item look like when it gets to the home. And that's something not in our control anymore, which really bothered me because I'm a perfectionist when it comes to the whole experience of full service operations, having done this for over 40 years. So we talked for quite some time, and we actually were the first casual dining brand with Bennigan's and Steak and Ale to join Reef and help them learn more about how to package, how to curtail the time from the order to the assembly to the delivery. And I think with them having over 4,000 delivery vessels around the world, I see this as a great opportunity for us to continue to build on the legacy of that emotional connection everybody has with Bennigan's and Steak and Ale, but still get menu items to a lot of people where I couldn't and have been prohibited for these last dozen years to open up restaurants. So instead of the bricks and mortar piece and the capital and the timeline that it would take typically to get us in all the different markets, not only in the United States, but but in the different international countries that we're in. This gives me a very quick ramp up, and I see this branching out into other delivery. We always inked another deal with a host kitchen outfit called Franklin Junction, and we're talking to a couple of others.
What's the difference between those two, by the way? Are they not also doing the host kitchen at Reef, or are they just doing delivery?
Yeah, they're so let me briefly, and Reader's Digest versions. Basically, they've come up with containers that they call vessels, and they fit it out depending on whether it's on what retail it is. And in our case, obviously, it's all about food. And so they basically outfit this vessel and set it down, and it's a brilliant strategy where, for the most part, they'll talk to a development person or a landlord in a mall where Sears or JCPenney's has closed, and they set it down in that parking lot and pay some kind of rent factor for it. And right. then they make the different contracts with all the third-party delivery, Uber Eats, and a whole host of them, and that gives us a chance to, really from start to finish, it's a matter of weeks versus the bricks and mortar, which is a matter of years. By the time you sign a franchisee, find a location, and if it's a ground up, get it built. So it really curtails the timeline, and the speed of entry into different markets has been tremendous. But on the Franklin Junction, to answer your question, that's a host kitchen. So what they do is they talk to different restaurants and hotels, and they say, here's how you can max the utilization of your F&B space. I brought that to my own franchisees that operate hotels, and it was widely received because, think about it, just common sense, because you're an entrepreneur as well, where, here you have this full service hotel, and during the peak of the pandemic, you were paying people to actually literally stay home. So right. The franchisees that are hoteliers as well, I said, I got an idea. Instead of paying people to stay home, bring them in. Let's open up your kitchen, because you have less than 1% occupancy right now, and let's get some revenue being generated out of delivery. And so we did the same thing. We contract different third-party delivery companies, we're depending on the market, and we've got it going. And now, not only did it help me my franchise partner, not only did it help them continue to build revenue and keep people employed and deliver food, but it was so successful that now we're looking at converting some of those spaces into Bennigan's on the Fly, which is my non-traditional brand, and has branched into the Bennigan's on the Fly virtual kitchen, ghost kitchen aspect as well.
Right. So Franklin is really you guys outsourcing and using your capacity, off-peak capacity, versus Reef Kitchen is more you can get into markets where you're not there, and right. They are. But can they really replicate the the quality of the food or the standard? Can they make the famous Monte Cristo, for instance, and keep that consistent around the world for you?
Well, you put your finger right on the key point, because we literally spent.
Because I'm hungry right now. I was thinking about the same.
God, I wish I could get a Monte Cristo to you. And by the way, it's the world famous Monte Cristo. Okay, so it's been around for a long time, and everybody craves it. And but that was a key point to me. So one was the integrity of the product. Two was, how long is it going to take there? Three is, what's it going to look like? Because my wife and I have done a lot of sampling from a lot of different brands that do delivery, and I tried the third party and see which ones really get the packaging down. And I tell you, 90% of the time, I'm hugely disappointed. One, with the product, and two, with the price. We recently just did this here. As I told you, we're in Lauderdale by the Sea here in Florida, and so we ordered a pizza and a salad, and it costs $55. And I know how much it costs to assemble the food, and so they get a cold pizza and a soggy salad for $55 is.
Yeah, Uber Eats made some good margin on that one anyway.
Oh yeah, everybody made money, and the only one that wasn't satisfied was my wife and I. So it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic, but one that you bring a very interesting point in terms of it's forced manufacturers to come up with packaging that will hold, the cardinal rule in our business: hot food hot, cold food cold. And to be able to do that, the packaging has to be right. The delivery person has to be trained. The trade area for delivery has to be small. And for us, what I did, was I cut down the number of menu items that they would have to prepare from Bennigan's. And by the way, we
Yeah, that was
branched into
smart. Very
some
smart.
of the steak and ale, so that I know that one, the prep is going to be easy, the assembly will be easy, the cook time will be fast, so they can get it out the door with a little bit more efficiency. So those are the kinds of aspects that we looked at to make sure that regardless of where it is or who's doing it, whether it's a host kitchen or with Reef or whoever else we do business with, they're going to have the formula down pat.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's jump into some of the mechanics.
Sure.
Large corporations is something that we help kind of reboot, and we call them BFSs because they're big, fat, and slow. And they often are on the brink of irrelevance, obscurity, and decline, whether they know it or not. That's where they're at. And I've seen this a lot in fast casual chains. They've just been victims of this, not getting out of their own way. They forget about the consistent brand promise that you just talked about, the food.
Sure.
They forget about the serving culture and how do you actually engage employees to do that and stay and not quit. And they forget about that authentic menu experiences, like a Ted's Roadhouse that maybe has survived because they've tried to keep that. But so I just look at the industry and go, oh my gosh, what an easy place to do a turnaround, or maybe not, because it's because all of those things are pretty prevalent across the spectrum. But your book that you wrote was actually called Back to Relevance, speaking of irrelevance. So I thought that was on point. What have you seen of some of the keys to kind of bringing these companies and these brands back from the brink, especially and turning it into more of a global brand? What kind of advice would you give folks that are looking to head into the rough waters that you and I play in a lot?
Well, first of all, fabulous question, and you're right. I mean, I had to learn a lot of the words that started with RE, so revitalization and renaissance and
Exactly.
re-engineering, and so
Reboot.
right. And so the name of the book is actually Return to Relevance, and then it's Bleeding Green 25/8, and Bleeding Green is what we say in the industry, where you are so passionate about your brand, and that's at all levels, whether it's the owner down to the newest DMO, which is a dish machine operator. We don't call them dishwashers anymore. And so
Let me write that down. Got it.
and so and we instill in them something that most brands, to get right to the heart of your question, have lost, and that's culture. You always, you can't train passion. You can't train attitude, as we both know. But one of the things that we look for is, can you embrace our mission? And we have a mission. And can you embrace our purpose? And we have a purpose clearly defined. And everybody has to know it and embrace it. And if you don't want to, that's fine. Work for Applebee's. That's okay. But you gotta demonstrate that kind of passion and commitment and dedication when you're coming to work with either Bennigan's or Steak and Ale. But when I look around at some of my colleagues in other brands, I can name a few just for illustration, whether it's Ruby Tuesdays or Chili's or Applebee's or even TGI Fridays, have been bought and sold by so many different private equity people now, that when the financial people get in, and it's a personal bias of mine, they start stripping away the intellectual capital, the people. And it's all about people in service. It's all about people. The widget is food. The food is made by people. The brand is executed by people, whether it's the general manager or the newest DMO. And what I see that happen was, they tried to, instead of invest in those people and train and get efficient from a labor standpoint, which is something else we'll get into when people are talking about high labor costs now. It's really they lose the very fabric and soul that made the brand very successful.
They really do. And you're hitting on three key components of reboots, which is people, platform, and passion. And I find it's not infused in enough of these companies.
Right. So I'll go back to when I came on board to help the private equity group with the turnaround. I've been doing this for about 40 years now. And I knew them. I mean, they knew me, and they brought me in. They say, Paul, we're going to take this out of bankruptcy. And just real quick for the audience, Steak and Ale and Bennigan's went into a Chapter 7 back in the early 2000s. And it had nothing to do with the brand. It had everything to do with a real estate play. It was not to get too convoluted here, but it had nothing to do with the brands. I saw brands that were doing amazing volumes, $3, $4, $5 million AUVs, average unit volumes. And
Right.
I'm saying, well,
Per
how was that?
location, that's pretty good.
how is that broken? And what I found was this, and I, by the way, to finish that thought, I negotiated a management buyout because I said, okay, guys, what do you think the brand is worth now coming out of bankruptcy? Because let's establish a value now, because I don't want to pay you a
Smart.
multiple
Good time
that I've
good time to
created.
establish a value. But
Absolutely.
we often call that the floor.
Yeah. Well, this was the basement. But what I saw was the unlocked value of the brand. And I said, you know what, if I don't know how to unlock that value and shine up these diamonds that got a little dirty through the mismanagement of people, and bring the leadership and retain the intellectual capital that my team possesses. My team is just second to none, just the best of the business. I mean, just to give you an example, my senior vice president of operations, his name is Sean Finn. Now you can't get more Irish than that. And we just celebrated his 32nd year with Bennigan. That's deep intellectual capital.
Yeah, those of you that don't know, that's part of the brand is the Irish hospitality.
Exactly. But it's American fare. But a lot of people get that. They say, well, you serving Irish food? It's like, look, have you ever had Irish food? No, you absolutely want, believe me when I tell you.
I have had Irish food. I'm usually not sober at the time. But that's a different story.
And that's the only time you eat it. So anyway, I had a big kick with the guys out there in Ireland talking about that. I said, our mix here is, from food to alcohol, usually about 75% food and 25% alcohol. And I asked them what was theirs, and they said, oh, 80-20. I said, you're kidding me. He said, 80 booze, Paul, not food. It's just a reverse. Nobody wants to eat our food.
Great
and
case
so
study.
it was very interesting. But back then, during the transition, what I found out, because my wife and I went to market to franchise partner to franchise partner, and I said, okay, what's broken, what needs to be fixed, and more importantly, as you brought up earlier, we call them our guests, not our customers. So what does the guest think of Bennigan's? And they love it. They continue to be loyal, as well as the old employees, the old team members that used to be part of Bennigan's and Steak and Ale. They are begging for us to open up where they live so they can leave whatever they're doing and come work for us, which I just love. But more importantly, there's an emotional connection that this brand created. And just for illustration, Steak and Ale was created by Norman Brinker, as Bennigan's was. And Steak and Ale was born in Dallas in 1966. And Bennigan's was created in Atlanta in 1976 and was part of Pillsbury when Norman Brinker went over to work for them. So Norman Brinker is an icon in our business, became a friend of mine later. I never worked for him, but I always respected him. So for Gwen and I and my team to be representing the only two brands he ever created is a gas. It's just a pleasure. I'm very proud of that fact. And he went on to do the Chili's and the Macaroni Grill and Maggiano's.
Well-renowned Maggiano's, the whole bit. He was
yeah.
And a lot of companies didn't survive those corporate takeovers like a Pillsbury. You think of Stuckey's and other ones where corporations just ruined the company.
The highway is littered with them. Absolutely.
Literally, the highway is on those. Real quick on, I've done a few turnarounds and I call it the brain damage phase. It's tough. And what I've noticed is that the more equity, the better the commitment. And not too many CEOs can say like you, hey, I actually at one point had 100% of this equity myself with my wife. And can you just talk about how that skin in the game helps kind of accelerate your strategy and especially your franchise strategy and all the partnerships and the business models that you're pursuing?
Right. A very important aspect of our business. So, and again, just to put a fine point on it, the business was neglected and abused. Both brands were for many, many years. And so when I came in to turn it around and we negotiated the management buyout, I not only wanted to purchase the brands, but I didn't want any partners. I didn't want anybody else involved in it. I wanted complete autonomy, complete control.
No bad influencers. Yeah. Get
yeah. I mean, they're waste of times, and usually they're, and again, my strategy has always been to invest our way into profitability, not to save our way into profitability. And the distinction is, so like we have an 8 ounce hamburger. And so one of the first things private equity people say, well, why don't you shave that down to 6 ounces? Do you know how much, money you'll save? But they never talk
Right.
about how many customers will defect and just go
No,
someplace else.
it's a business model tweak, not by someone who doesn't understand the menu. There's plenty of those guys out there.
Well, Ray Kroc of McDonald's always said, the quality, service, cleanliness, and value equals
Mm,
profitability. And so when you strip the value out of the experience, whether it's fast food, casual dining, or Morton Steakhouse, you lose that connection with your guests. And when you do that, it's all over. And that's why, again, back to the
right.
culture. When you forget that, that's what happens. But as I saw, the emotional connections were attached, and the volumes could exceed $3, $4, $5 million on a per unit basis. And my strategy was to do franchising only. I was getting into the corporate development as well, but every time I reopened a restaurant, a potential franchisee wanted to
Right.
buy it.
Makes
And so I
sense.
thought, you know what, instead of
Sense.
bifurcating the strategy, why don't we just focus on making the franchise community successful and
Right.
improving their metrics and improving unit level profitability, improving the efficiencies that we can get through architecture and construction, and cut down the time from signing a deal to opening a restaurant. So I focus, our team on those kinds of things, and it worked out magnificently because we have, we have both a international division as well as domestic now, and it's gaining traction because of the different initiatives that I already shared with you. But those are the kinds of things when I talk to a potential franchisee, or even a supplier partner with, like we have a national distribution with Cisco, the credibility that they give you because they know you got your money on the table, you put your money in, and as you said, and it's popular saying, you have skin in the game, that credibility is through the roof. And when a new person or group is interested in a franchise opportunity, my wife and I talk to them ourselves. We give them the respect of not letting them talk to a VP who just wants a commission or some director of franchising. We talk to them personally and tell them, this journey that I'm sharing with you. We tell them why the value proposition is through the roof, why the franchise model has been honed, not for the last 20 months, but for the last 40 years. And that resonates so well with the people that we talk to.
Yeah, it's common sense too. A lot of big companies forget that you've got to talk to the people that care and have a stake in it. And it seems to me, listening to you, the thing you really bought was this emotional brand equity with these brands. And my question about that is, I think you call it the nostalgia. How do you cross over generations to Gen XYZ, all these different groups, not to mention international attractability? Because some of them have never heard of Bennigan's or Steak and Ale, which really goes back.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, what's the connected tissue to how do you actually get the next gen moving on this? So delivery is one way. That's clearly working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, to a lot of people, especially the younger generations, once they try us, they're hooked. I mean, we opened up recently, and there were lines around the building, and it wasn't because they didn't know about us. It's because their grandparents or parents or, then our social media, of course, we do a lot of marketing and a lot of public relations, but they couldn't wait to give us trial. And I think that regardless of, I don't care if you're 12 or 112, you're looking for a value, you're looking for an experience, you're looking for a price point connection that makes sense. And so our portions have always been, we were talking earlier about the world famous Monte Cristo. It's, we just don't have menu items. We have trademark menu items that everybody loves. Every day we get a request to either open up a new restaurant in their area.
Right.
Please send me a Monte Cristo. Please send me, we have a Death by Chocolate, which is trademark dessert, which is,
Yeah, I think you trademarked baby back ribs before everyone stole that from you.
Oh, baby back ribs, yeah, and we won't mention Chili's that stole it, but anyway, yeah,
But
it's
we
just
do. Right.
yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic, and so
Yeah.
I think regardless of age, people still want a good experience. And today, if you don't mind me, I just want to add this because today, that doesn't exist. The bad operators have become very very bad operators. A lot of people have been forced to cut back on training, cut back on people, try to do a lot more with less, and at the same time, take menu increases of 5 to 10%. And so again, get back to the value proposition. When value is lost, you defect. And I see a phenomenal opportunity for us to replace, with added market share as we go into different markets with, new stores, delivery, the curbside pickup, the catering aspects of our business. And I just don't bring one brand. We bring 3 or maybe 4 brands when you include the ghost kitchen aspect of Bennigan's on the Fly. So that by itself brings a whole new, a stable of brands for an investor or franchise partners, but also for the guests to be able to know and depend on the experience that would, what the name of the company
it's all
will be
connected.
legendary.
Right. Let's switch to that. What if entrepreneurs are listening in? What if they want to be a franchise location owner? What do they need to do?
Well, you got to ask yourself a question because, again, I already mentioned earlier that you have to have a passion for the business. Food and beverage, I don't think this is a trade secret, is a hands-on business. To be absentee, to just think that, I'm just going to buy drinks for people at the bar and you're going to be successful this is not your this is not your opportunity. Bennigan's and Steak and Ale is not your opportunity. But I'll tell you this, if you want to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself, franchising is a great option, always has been. But the execution of all the different moving parts that go into, the restaurant operation, any restaurant operation, is key. And, and part of why franchisees fail, and I'll share this with everybody on, there's a number one reason. They don't follow the system. The franchising is a beautiful thing because it's a system of resources and training and whatever business discipline you might be weak in. Franchisees should shore that up and help you, whether it's the real estate location, or it's the construction piece, or it's architecture, or it's operations, marketing, finance. All those different business disciplines go part and parcel of why a franchise model is good. But so for us, we're looking for people that will embrace this the passion and
so people, platform, passion, it's critical. But let's take me for instance. If I wanted to open one down here in Naples, booming area, this would, I think, I know 3 locations, this would do very well. What kind of skin do I have to put in the game for a good sized footprint, I guess? Well,
you bring up another opportunity that I think is going to be looming large for the next several years, and that's closed restaurants that we call second generation space.
They're everywhere.
So right, and you see these, and again, there's lots of different reasons for that to happen, but at the end of the day, you can buy it because my wife and I go to Naples quite often. So whether it's a closed Carrabba's or a closed Applebee's, for us, for Bennigan's, you want 5,000 feet basically. You want 6,000 feet for Steak and Ale. But to look at the numbers are phenomenal when you look at a closed Applebee's, say, and you take it over, and instead of building a new one, which will cost you $2 million, you can convert an existing one that's closed. And with booths you can reskin, tables you can refinish. Sometimes they leave the equipment in there. We just have to refurbish it and make sure the cook line is set up correctly. And then maybe you can flip that for $500,000 instead of $2 million. And then you're doing $3 to $4 or $5 million AUV that's throwing off 20 to 25% cash flow. Well, you know what? The returns cash on cash are over 100%. So, the aspects, and again, it's not an earnings claim, it's not a guarantee. It's just what could and is possible to happen, within franchise models, regardless of whether it's Bennigan's or Steak and Ale or anybody else. But but the key part is to take a look at, well-located second generation space that you'd be able to sign a lease on, and then buy smartly.
So I might look into that. If you look at travel industry right now, personal travel, I've been traveling for over a year now. Ever since I got COVID, I'm like, I'm done. I'll start traveling again. Business travel still dead. And so if you look ahead at 2023, business travel's back finally. Things are opening up. Maybe we're not ordering at home as much anymore. What's your plan? I assume at that point you're opening up as fast as you can at that point. So I guess in our closing moments here, just give us a snapshot of where you guys are going to be 5 years from now.
Yeah, well, again, I have signed. Well, let me tell you the view. The view is, look, people have been hibernating for the last 2 years with
Some
the
of it,
on
yeah.
again, off again restrictions. They
Right.
want to get out. We are social animals as human beings. We like to socialize in a bar. We like to socialize at a full service. So, I guess the fast food, the pizza places have benefited because of the drive-through and the easy delivery aspects, but full service, the pent-up demand, and don't forget, with lower capacity, because so many different restaurants have closed now, there's a greater opportunity for market share capture for those in casual dining that do all the things that we talked about earlier. In 5 years from now, I have recently signed a couple of master franchise agreements are where you're selling a large territory
Sure.
or
Smart.
a country. And so with that fully built out, we will go from over 100 restaurants to possibly over a 5-year time, and counting the delivery vessels that we do, to probably somewhere between 300 and 500 restaurants and delivery vessels combined. It may be more than that, depending on the speed that we can get the delivery vessels up and running. But the demand is there. The emotional connections are there. So from a business equation, it all adds up into a big S, which is success.
Yeah, sounds good. Not to mention other types of creative partnerships that you could do in country by country.
Yeah.
Paul, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And you've been listening to legendary restaurant brands chairman and CEO, Paul Mangiamele. And this is Dean DeBias with the Reboot Chronicles. I want to thank you for joining us from around the globe today, and we will see you soon.
Dean, grazie mille.
Ciao.